Hello, Hockey World. It is Tuesday, July 7th, 2020.
I'm Michael Lagello.
I'm Anthony Mangione.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday in the afternoons to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And today we are very happy to have coming with us from, I guess, Alberta somewhere, right?
No.
Where are you, Shane? Where are you located? Shane.
We got some latency.
Oh, well. We have some, Shane. We have Shane Malloy, and he's
I'm doing good, gentlemen. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you? No, it's are we frozen on you, or are we working okay?
Very good. We got a little bit of delay, but that's technology. Yeah, I can imagine when people are trying to have Zoom conversations with 16 people, and it's crazy, but that's the life we're living right now.
No, that is life we're living, and maybe maybe we should have you log out, log back in real quick. That way, we'll get it working right. So
yeah, just sign on, or I'll boot you off, and then just click on the link that we sent you again.
I'm back. There we go. So that is Shane Malloy, and Shane.
That was him.
That was Shane Malloy.
Shane, I think he lives near Fredericton now, right? Russ?
Yeah, it's Fredericton. Yeah.
Oh,
He moved east. His wife. He moved.
But he was working in Canada, right? Like I'm right.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, he was in the Vancouver area for a long time. He's from Alberta originally.
Right. There we go. All right, Shane's back. Hey, you're looking a lot better too. That works. Sounds a lot better.
Wow.
There we go.
No, it didn't.
Yeah, no. Anyway, we're just singing your praises, Shane. You are not in Western Canada anymore. So you moved back east. I understand. And
it's quieter, but in hockey we all travel, so in the end, it doesn't really matter where you live.
Yeah, no, exactly. And the great thing about Shane and having Shane and Russ is we have the band back together of the Hockey Prospects radio that so many people have listened to for so many years, all day long on Saturday and all day long on Sunday in repeat mode.
Yeah, I was gonna play Bob O'Reilly, Shane, but the copyright laws prevented me from doing it.
There you go. So yeah, it's good stuff. So Russ, why don't we start off with you here? And you got because you go Russ.
Well, a long time ago, people may not even know Shane and I had a business, a hockey show, and we enjoyed that. So we're going to talk a little hockey business. And Shane, I kind of wanted to ask you, what do you think the NHL and NHLPA will now do to sort of get back the lost revenue? Having a new CBA is great. Now they've got to try and recoup. What do you think they're going to do?
Well, first off, you got to commend both parties to recognize the situation they were in and look at where they needed to go. And the most important thing they need to do is just get the foundation structure of the CBA and the return to play done. So then the focus can be from behind the scenes on chasing that lost revenue. And this is one of the really interesting things. I think it's a really exciting time. I know a lot of people are really stressed, but necessity is the mother of innovation. And this is an opportunity where both the players and them having an active role in new models and new products and new services for revenue generation can work hand in hand with the owners and the NHL head office collectively, because they really recognize that they truly are partners. And so for me, when I look at it from a business perspective, I think it's a fantastic opportunity where the NHL and the NHLPA and the players can open themselves up to make business opportunities and agreements with other entities. So you look at, for instance, in other industries, there's a lot of incubators that work with these industries to increase best practices, to increase different revenue models, efficiencies. So there's an opportunity to go for the NHL and the PA to look at, are there different university incubators that we can partner with? Are there different companies that we can partner with? Because that's one of the things we forget. The NHL at the head office has done, since Gary Bettman's been there, has done an excellent job at driving revenue. Mm-hmm. But they're also managing all the different entities at the same time, and being innovative and managing is really challenging because you only have so much time in the day. But if you can partner with people that can take the innovation part off your plate and be able to bring in products and services that can be implemented and help drive revenue, that is not only player engaging, ownership engaging, stakeholder and fan engaging, then those are opportunities that the NHL, is certainly going to look at, and the players are going to look at, because they're going to be interested. No, their biggest issue for the players is escrow. So how do we reduce escrow?
Yeah.
How do we look at this gate-driven league from the NHL all the way down and throughout the industry, and how do we reduce the percentage of gate-driven? How can we take advantage of how great this sport is live and be able to put that into the broadcast feeds? How can we digitally engage the different audiences?
Yeah.
Recognize that this is one of the crazy things. There's more young kids under the age of 18 playing NHL 20 on EA than they are actually playing minor hockey.
I know.
So you're always looking for entry points with your customers. There's the NHL's entry point. For every possible situation you're looking at, whether it is understanding the game, understanding coaching, understanding scouting, understanding like the business of the game, everything can be actually educated through this game. And that's how you build fans. Because if you don't get a fan by the time they're 15, you lost them. Like the likelihood of getting them is really rare. Now we talk about these older fans coming in, but they're one-offs. You really have to get them early. The best way to get them early is through the video game. And then there's all types of different strategies and products and services that you can build out of this opportunity moving forward.
What's always been interesting to me, Shane, is like over the years, I remember like going way back to the lockout, even like the official year-long lockout. I would talk to a lot of agents, and agents would have a lot of great ideas. And it was amazing to me how many great ideas agents had. And, we have like Donald Fair, and he talks to the agents to a degree, but not as much. The NHLPA, he talks more to the players. The players talk to their agents, but I kind of wish the agent, if I was the NHL, I would actually put the agents onto a panel themselves. I would give them a forum. You know what I mean? I would give them a way to, because they really, they're real good business people. Don't you think there's a lot of ideas there that we're missing?
No, absolutely. And what it is it's a disconnect of stakeholders.
Yeah.
So recognize who are all the stakeholders in the game, whether it's like obviously the owners, management, the NHL staff, the fans, the agents, the players. There's like multiple of different stakeholders. Make sure all of them have a voice, particularly ones that have a high skill set in, for instance, in business and entrepreneurship. Because for us to drive, as an industry, to drive additional revenue, we're going to have to think entrepreneurial in every respect.
Yeah.
And so that's an understanding of risk assessment. It's an understanding of implementation. It's understanding of scalability and revenue generation. And when you understand those things, that gives you an opportunity. Okay, how will this work? What's the time frame for this product or service to get in? And then how does it impact our stakeholders? And sometimes we forget where great ideas come from, because it doesn't always have to come from a PhD. It can come from my 8-year-old.
Sure.
And he could just go, "Hey, Dad, why didn't you think of this?" And I'd be like, "Oh, yeah." That actually happens. And that happens sometimes. So, but unless you're talking to your stakeholders and have a system where effective communication flow is done, and there's a place where all of this information goes, then it becomes very challenging to put ideas into action and build a scalable plan moving forward. And that's some of the things we haven't done in the past. And this is where I think this industry really has a great opportunity from that respect.
I agree, because we all know players want to play. Like they just want to play for the most part, and they have ideas, but agents have ideas. Agents are thinking. And I'll never forget Rich Winter after the lockout. And I had a long discussion with him, and he said, I'm partners now with the NHL because the whole thing had been decided. And he's like, but I can't call up Gary. I can't call up, the Edmonton Oilers and say, why are you keeping ticket prices so low? Like, I think we should raise ticket prices. If I'm a business partner, I should be able to call you up and say, can we raise ticket prices? So there's a disconnect there. It's absolutely 100%. Like, they're partners, but they're not. And I think that we're getting more and more towards that as we go along. Lost you for a second there. But I really always found that kind of like.
That's interesting. We had Rich Winter on maybe a couple of years ago on Hockey Prospect Radio. Very smart guy. That's a really valid point. Like,
it is.
If you want to be partners, you should have good open two-way communication. Otherwise, it's kind of hard to do it.
He's like, what if I have an idea for a promotion or something like that? Like, I got a thought. We could do this, Like, if I have an idea for promotion. He's like, we don't have, although we're business partners, we're sharing 50-50 money here. Although we're sharing 50-50 money here, we, Rich Winter said, I can't just go to them and say, change ticket prices, or I can't go and say, why don't we try this promotional idea or something like that. And so there is, you know what I mean, Shane, there's like a disconnect there that does exist.
Uh-oh.
If that makes sense.
No, it's the connection. Something.
Shane, shoot, that stinks.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry, guys. There's a little bit of a misconnection there. I'm going to try on a different connection.
Perfect.
As we're continue to talk.
We'll be here. Thanks, Dan. Thank you very much. We'll be seeing Shane back in a sec. So I just, that is something, and I do think agents are an underused.
Well, just to touch on something that I was going to ask Shane about, and I will when he comes back.
Yeah.
I mean, we realize there is a disconnect between what the players think they know and what they actually know. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been this crap that came out from Panarin a few weeks ago about escrow, and Ryan Kessler about escrow, because they don't fundamentally understand what escrow is.
I don't buy that, Mike. I think that stuff that came out from Panarin was a plant. It was an agent.
It might have been, but
I think it was agent driven.
I think it was
that was when I saw the comment. That was my initial impression, was that his agent said, "I need you to put this out on your feed. I'll craft it to you. We could talk about how you want to make it sound like it's your voice,
right?"
But we know where it's coming. It seems like I think we know where that one was coming from.
And guys like Panarin, like an agent who has a guy like Panarin who'll go to him and say, you've got a responsibility because you make all this money to come out there and be like a guy who's going to help lead, and be a leader in the end. So he's going to go, because it really, as I've known Panarin for a little while, it's not necessarily in his personality to take that role. And I was really a little bit surprised by it. But
I think now with this big contract in New York, I think that's why
he's got a prominent platform now.
And he does feel, and I think he does also have a sense of responsibility. And I think that, the agent comes to him and says, listen, there's a lot of guys out there, you need to talk up. And,
Shane, let me get your input on this, because when Artemi Panarin came out, and I think it was a couple weeks ago, and made that statement about escrow, and then Ryan Kessler followed up with the statement about escrow, and how, escrow, I think the way they phrased it was the players saving the owner's butts or something like that. And I like the misconception about what escrow is for from the players. And even if it was a plant, even if it was an agent writing that particular statement, I don't understand what the player. It's a 50-50 revenue split, and there has to be a mechanism there to balance it at the end of every year. So escrow is a necessity, and we know in this new CBA that escrow is a necessity. So I don't understand what the dickering about it beforehand was all about.
Well, I think part of the issue is misinformation, or not enough information that is getting flowed through to the players directly, so they understand what escrow is, and also the calculations of what hockey-related revenues are.
Right.
I think that would be very helpful. The other thing is, I think to understand. Yes, I think Panarin certainly has a voice, and certainly needs to be able to express his concerns. But also, this leads to a responsibility now to the players to go. We have to do more than just playing to drive revenue. We have to do different. If we really believe we are a 50-50 partner, then we're going to have to do more outside of actually playing to drive revenue. We can't just pack up and go home at the end of the day. It's not good enough anymore. If you want to reduce escrow, the players, it'll have to be a player-driven strategy.
Right.
And it built on immediate and long-term escrow reduction through immediate new revenue growth and long-term salary growth, which is going to be, they're going to have to find services and products to help reduce that. But they're going to have to be active participants in those situations. They can't just say, I'm going to put my name on it and go, I approve of this. That's not going to be good enough, because the only way to drive new revenue is to have engagement.
Yeah.
The only thing the fans really care about are the players. So the players are going to have to be more engaged in that. And I'd like to see, for me, the players and the owners do more structures together and different strategies and different business opportunities, do them together. I would like to, it would have been really cool to see like Mr. Snyder and one of the Philadelphia Flyer players do something really cool together, or a group of them, right? In terms of helping drive some different models. There's opportunities now. I honestly think this is the most exciting time in the NHL for the growth of business and the growth of the industry. There's just so many opportunities. There's so many smart people and smart groups out there that when they start collaborating with each other, that's where these things really open up in terms of like that open innovation. I think is really critical.
Yeah.
And for the NHL and the PA my recommendation is just to be an open book.
Yeah.
Just sit back and listen and like take it all in and ask good questions. And that's like, and just be open to it. Just because it didn't happen in the past, that's okay. Because the technological landscape and the landscape of how business works and evolves happens so quickly that you have to be, entrepreneurial in much of your thinking.
It's a really good point. Go ahead, Anthony.
Shane, one of the things, I know you're obviously very much on the business side of hockey now, but I want you to sort of put on your hockey mat, your hockey ops hat, and I'm going to put you in the role of Ron Francis, constructing the Seattle expansion team. What would be your core elements that you would have, that you would really emphasize and tell to your staff that this is how we want our team to play? What are the things that I'm looking for that I believe are going to be the most successful in helping us not only have success now, but in the future?
I'd actually step back and not look at it from what type of player we want. I'd actually look at an hockey operations, of how we're going to structure our operations department in terms of what type of performance management systems do we have in place? How do we grade players effectively? How does our amateur staff, pro staff, player development department all work in conjunction with each other? How does information flow in terms of communication flow between each department? How do we grade players? What systems do we use in terms of weighting and balancing? What percentages do we use in terms of using analytics and probability, along with like video, with like obviously the eye test? How do we integrate all of that in? What percentages do we use? And then, we start to look for blind spots in that system in terms of, okay, what are we missing? Right? Like what are we missing? Yeah. Like, how do we do the interview process? How do we do background, analysis more effectively? How do we train our scouts that are out in the field to be better interviewers, to be better investigators?
Right.
Like during the summer, do we set up courses for them to improve their skill sets in a variety of different ways? So look at it. I think one of the worst things to happen to hockey operations sometimes is the word hockey in front of it. So operations is not treated like an operations department in any other industry. Like, no, of course we're not in hockey. We're not building a widget, and all of our success is based on human performance, whether it's on the ice or off the ice.
Yeah.
But recognize that it's still an operations department, and bring in people that can help you with that efficiency. So, a lot of Fortune 500 companies, they have R&D departments whose their job is to strictly to be efficiency and to look at situations and how do we become more efficient? How do we get better? Right? So that, because Ron Francis in reality is a CEO. His job is leadership and management, and that's it. And hire really good people to manage all those situations. But it's hard to improve and to get better and to be on the cutting edge and use best practices from other industries when you're in a constant management mode. But if you have a staff that's their job and they provide, these concepts that are actionable and have practicality that their staff can use and implement, then that's a tremendous advantage. If that was that's a conversation I would have with Ron. Is, think about this. You have 3 players that sit up in the press box every game that you don't use and you get no value from. It's a sunk cost, and it's going to be somewhere between $2.2 million or more every game, for an entire year. That's a sunk cost. What does it cost you to have a team of 4 people that are at the top of their food chain in a bunch of different areas that work in conjunction as a 4-person unit, that may cost you $500,000 to $700,000 a year.
Yeah, right.
Think about what the value is. What is the what do you get in return? What's your return on investment? Is that 5 to 1? Is that 10 to 1 on decision-making processes? It could be. I think that's where the evolution next for hockey operations will be, and that would be what I would recommend to Ron. I wouldn't even what you're scouting for is the results, and what you really need to do, I think, from my perspective, is build the systems and protocols and processes before you get to that point.
We've been trying to recommend team names to Ron, and so far nothing stuck. Like, we'd like a name on that franchise.
Not getting anywhere with that.
I'm about I'm all about Sasquatch. That's just me.
I'm with you. I'm a Finding Bigfoot subscriber here, so I'm like 100% behind that, Shane. Like, that's my deal.
No, it should be the Seattle Metropolitans, because that name has a history of losing.
It's just not even that. I look at it from a business perspective.
Yeah.
It's the easiest name.
It is.
It's the easiest name to market.
It's so marketable.
Absolutely.
Like, when you walk around, I was in Seattle.
Hang on, Shane. What I gave as what you could do for marketing, if it was the Sasquatch, is you could literally have somebody in a Bigfoot suit come out with your New Jersey on out of the woods. You could film that.
Oh yeah.
Put that on the web. That would be a big hit.
Oh, I mean, it's endless. And the other thing is, you want to be able to appeal to a multiple different stakeholders. So could sponsors build platforms around that in the Seattle region? Of course they could.
Yeah,
will kids love it? Of course they will.
Already do.
Will it be a cool emblem? Of course it will.
Yeah, right.
Can you as Russ said, could you do all these different types of parodies and cool videos about searching for Sasquatch? Like, it's the whole Wells, where's Waldo? I mean, there's so many.
There's so many things
to do with that, and it ties into the First Nations, their mythology in that region.
Oh yeah,
Which I think is it's a great tie-in to that, which I think is really critically important to be able to understand your region and the history and how that matters.
And if you could get Lee Majors and Lindsay Wagner to show up, you could have a $6 million man night with the Sasquatch. There you go.
Yeah, no, I'm not all that kind of retro stuff is great. I mean, basically, you're gonna have a bunch of Wookiees running around.
No question.
The arena.
No, it's so simple.
For me, I just think there's too many opportunities not to say yes to that comparative to the other suggestions that I've seen. And it's not. Also, the great thing is it's not hokey. Right. It's like Sasquatch.
It's a cool cryptid. I mean, it's a cool cryptid as opposed the Jersey Devil has never been anything that anyone's really bought, but Bigfoot has believers. That's the Jersey Devil's not a cool cryptid. I honestly and when you hike around the Seattle area, and I've done that before. It's you go through the woods and there'll be. Every sign says look out for deer, bears, and Sasquatch. They have fun with it. It's a fun thing that they do out there. It's all over the place, and you're just they enjoy it. It's part of their culture, like you said. They get it. I was like that 100%, but I don't think that's where it's going to go. I don't think that's what they're
going to name it. They're naming the sockeyes after a freaking fish.
Well, they're going to Kraken, which is Kraken's cool too. There's elements of that's good, I think. But if they go Kraken, it's my second choice.
Well,
but I would be,
Yeah, it's just it misses out on regional applications.
It does.
That's my issue. It's obviously that's a Greek mythology.
Yeah,
it doesn't really apply to that area. I mean, there's some really cool things you can do about it, but I mean, of course, with Kraken, the rum, there's some there's an automatic.
Yeah, no, there's no. Yeah.
But it just sort of it doesn't apply to its region. And I'm a really big believer in behavioral economics. Yeah. And people don't buy what you do and how you do it. They buy why you do it, right? Why? Yeah. It's all about, and sports is tribalism. Understand tribalism within that behavioral economics realm. And I think that's where I think Sasquatch is such a better tie-in for them.
Yes,
because it gives them that regional tie-in. Look, because I grew up in in BC, right near, and I've been to Seattle a lot. And,
Yeah.
Vancouver. Both Seattle and Vancouver have similar aspects about them. They were quaint port cities. That's very nice. You're nice and quaint. You're not part of the big time, and they're very isolated from the rest of the country in the United States and in Canada. So they have their own kind of like almost up yours kind of mentality there.
Yeah.
We're going to do the things that we want to do. If you don't like it, we don't care, right?
Yeah.
And Vancouver really didn't blow up until Expo 86, and then again during the Olympics. And Seattle is, as beautiful it is, it sort of gets forgotten. That's where I think Sasquatch really ties into it. It's our mythology of our region.
It is.
So that's where I think that the behavioral economics aspect of it, sociology, anthropology, I think that really has to tie into their thought process because the name really matters. It's huge. Like there's some names out there that were added. I'm like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Like natural predators. I don't know. Like predator. What does the saber-toothed tiger have to do with Nashville? I don't know.
No, that was a bit. No, I mean it was more. They weren't calling
them the banjos. We know that.
If you go to the Museum of History in Nashville, which I've been to, there were a lot of saber-toothed tigers found in that area. Like they were dug up by the bones. That's sort of where they got that from a little bit. And but there's also like a bad history of racism, and they did awful things to the Indians. So when you look at that museum, it's just really messed up in general. But you go through there, but it's like it's definitely but that's where they got it from.
And Russ and I got an example of that up yours mentality from Seattle when we were in there at a Mariners game last year, Russ, right? Remember that?
I do.
Go ahead with your question.
No, so go ahead, Russ, you go.
I was gonna say, Shane, so we're gonna talk about the draft for a minute. I know people would like us to argue about our rankings, but we're not gonna do that. Maybe there'll be another day for that. Who knows?
Let's have another day for that. We'd like to have another day for that. Please.
But a question that I've gotten asked a lot, but I've never asked you, and this season's been weird, right? The season got shut down quickly. There's no combine. There's no end of the season tournaments. There's no playoffs. How does that affect the team's scouting staff?
Well, in all honesty, the funny thing is most teams or all the teams should have been 90% finished their work. If not worst, 85. So the last 15% or 10% would have been just rewatching some video, rethinking about, because you have time, rethinking about your methodology of how you put together information, gives you other opportunities to have more conversations and do more background digging. So more conversations with people surrounding the player themselves,
right?
Do more background information because you have more time. So that is certainly an advantage. I think from the live views, the people that I spoke to, and I've been around for about 20 years, it's like shouldn't not be significant. If it
now,
is
what about the summer showcases? What do you think about the summer showcases? Because normally it wouldn't matter, but now since the draft's in October, some of those guys who were set up for the draft, you could get another look at them. Would that change your mind, like in some of these scrimmages?
No, not really.
Okay.
No, because to me, in all honesty, I think those situations, along with tournaments, sometimes get weighted more higher in outside of the NHL organizations than they do inside the organizations.
Yeah.
So, and one of the myths that's out there, and it gets propped up by independent scouting departments, is some people will put out these ridiculous lists of like 300, 500, 200. It's crazy. That's actually completely not accurate of how things actually do. The average team will put out a list of 85 players. On a really super deep year, it would be 100.
Yeah.
And the mistake is that if you say somebody puts out a list, say I put out a list of, say, in a normal year it'd be like 85. They'll think that the player on the 80th spot will actually go 80th. When in reality, that player would probably go 180th.
Right. Sure.
Right. So take all the lists, take an 85 list of an NHL team, and you start extrapolating it, and almost at some point you start doubling it and adding to it. So a player that would be 85th or 90th on their list would be in the 7th round.
Yeah.
Right. So that's always the misconception. So that's where I personally think, I look at HockeyProspect.com's list this year. It's the best independent list I've ever seen in my 20 years. Mm-hmm. It's the most accurate in terms of how it mimics the NHL and their explanations of why they did the list the way they did this year and last year. Because you get these independents who are like, it's impossible for one person or a couple people who have no scouting experience to put together a list of even 85. Like, I've been scouting for a long time, and I'm not saying I'm super scout, because I'm not, and I make mistakes all the time, but I scramble. If I even see over 200 games in a year, and Russ has seen me do it, he can attest this. I'm scrambling to get 50 reports in that I think I have enough live views, I have enough background information, I've seen enough video on isolation tapes and ISOs and shift to shifts that I feel comfortable putting 50, and then the last 30 will be, maybe 75% completed, and those are the ones who I think will be cups of coffee. It's that hard. And I miss guys, and I'm seeing 200 plus games. It's impossible for some guy to watch a video and say, "Oh, I have a list of 300." Like, you're full of it.
Yeah.
Shane, it's funny because when the draft lottery happened, we had a couple shows right after it, and a lot of people thought it was unfair. But of course, after the fact, because one of the 8 eliminated teams is going to get the number 1 pick, and Alexis Lafreniere. I didn't think it was an unfair scenario because they went with the same percentages that they had gone with in previous drafts. It's just you want. Ideally, I think the NHL wants the team that's the worst or one of the worst to get that top pick to help that team go forward and improve. And in this situation, it could be an Edmonton or a Pittsburgh or Toronto if they lose in the first round, getting that number 1 pick. I don't think it's unfair that happens, but because that was the setup. But what did you think of the setup, and what did you think of the end result?
Well, to be honest, this conversation I've had with Brian Burke over the last couple of years, and we both thought, and we both agreed, and we were throwing information, ideas back and forth, is that the bottom 8 teams will be in a lottery by themselves. So you can't move up anymore. You can move from 8th to 1st, but that's it.
Right.
Max. And then you do that lottery. And then you do a separate lottery for 9 to, now essentially it's going to be pretty soon, it's going to be 16. So the 16th could only go to 9. So you don't have this crazy jump of 12 and 13 spots where personally, I don't like to reward ineptitude, but you also the poor teams still need help, but that eliminates these crazy jumps from 12 to 3 and things like that, where a team misses by 6 points, 3 wins, then all of a sudden gets 3rd overall pick and gets that big jump. So, you look at Philadelphia, New Jersey, Oilers. There's always teams that have made that jump, and I think it would be more fair if they did it that way. But that's my personal opinion.
Shane, how do you view the overall depth of this upcoming draft compared to previous years?
This draft, I think it's average, and it's interesting you say that because I think the quality of the players is higher than average, but maybe the depth of the number of players that will play more than 200 games is not. So if you look at historical average from 2006 to 2015, which is the salary cap era, give every team 5 years, the average number of players to play more than 200 games in the NHL is 54. So that's it.
Right.
So go on any list and try to pick the best 54 players, because that's the average of who's going to be there for 200 games. Now, but then you look at who are the cup of coffee players, those players between, say, 50 games and 199. On average, it's only 18. So go through the list again, find 72 guys that you think are going to play more than 50 games, identify the ones that are going to play more than 200 of that 50, on average 54, and that's it. So I'm not kidding. 2/3 of the draft, they won't ever play. They won't play. So when you hear these crazy things like, "Oh, what a great pick in the 5th round," that player may have nothing against that player, but that player may only have a 10% chance of playing 200 games in the NHL.
Right.
Like that's like saying, hey, Eck, you got a 10% chance of living. Well, that sucks. That's terrible. So
I'll take it. I'll take it. I mean, personally, I'll take it.
Now
that is really critical.
That's a Malloyism if I've ever heard one.
I mean, I agree. That's not bad. I love some of the business. Getting back to business for a second. It is a really interesting thing that we've talked about this before on the phone, you and I, Shane, and it's like that. You have this business. There's a great business overall thing that has to happen, and you're right that we need to borrow from other businesses who innovate in different ways. And sometimes the best innovator is not the best marketer, and there's all different sorts of things that sometimes people get put into too many jobs. But there's also this thing with hockey where you have this talent, and you have this talent issue of things, and those guys want that other stuff to be invisible. Like when you're around them, they don't want to know anything about that. Like. I mean, the most you'll see a Flyer player working with the Flyers is like, the Ed Snyder Foundation or something like that, where, or they'll show up at a hospital, obviously, and help some, but, they do that a lot more than they get credit for. But, and there's stuff that they work with, but you're not going to see like they don't want to get involved in the business thing. That's what they do best. That's what they do well. I shoot, I score. That's the mentality. And that's a tough mentality to get to change in hockey players. Don't you think? I mean, that to me is still like the issue that you're not going to be able to change that so quickly, even though there's no question it benefits everybody. Lost them. Oh well.
He'll come back.
Great question, Eck. Thank you very much for asking it.
Well, you see, that's nice. It's nice to get that recognition from yourself.
Yeah. Now they know I have a 10% chance of living.
He hated that question so much he hung up.
Yeah. No, I thought it was ridiculous, long-winded and stupid. I don't blame him. But
damn Canadian internet.
But I'm telling you, this is, Anthony, I saw you shaking your head a little bit. You kind of know what I'm saying, right? It's like, this is like these players, they don't want to be involved in this.
No, they didn't. No, I don't think they don't. And it's real interesting. Up change back now.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
There he is.
All right. So Shane's now out among nature.
He's hand gliding now.
He's going to find us a Sasquatch before the end of the show. So I don't know if you heard what I said, Shane, but I was like, how do you get the players who don't want to do anything but skate, shoot, and score to be involved in this? Like, how do you convince them that they do? I mean, it's really hard to do. I think so.
Sorry, guys, you're breaking up a little bit. I'm trying
to
find the best connection for this. Technology is not being my friend today.
No, it's fine. And we're gonna let you go, Shane, because I don't want you to have to we really appreciate it so much. And let's get you back on here in the future, and we'll when the internets are working nicer and all that stuff, because it was really, I thought, fascinating and interesting to hear. And I've always loved your business connection, and the way you think the sport is really important. So thank you so much for being on here today.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
That sounds good. All right. So I was going
to tell one quick story.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in 2007 was the Patrick Kane draft, or for Flyers fans, the James Van Riemsdyk draft, however you want to look at it. It was in Columbus that year. I got a chance to go with Shane on the road a little bit, and we were in London, and we saw Patrick Kane and that great London team. Steve Mason was actually a part of that team too.
Yeah, right.
So at the draft, we used to do these live shows. I used to do them for Sportsology for the NHL. And so we're there, and Blackhawks fans are sitting in front of us. There's a lot of them. They're all wearing their Blackhawks jerseys. Bill Platschke, if you know him from on Being Online, he was the head guy. He was the guy with the lead pitchfork.
Right.
And so we're all going over the draft, and we're going over our lists. And so everybody from Chicago is like, well, who are the Blackhawks taking? And we're like, they're going to take Patrick Kane. And they were like, boo! No, we don't want him. He's too small. He's too skinny.
Yeah.
I have the actual recording somewhere, and they just killed it for like 3-4 minutes.
Yeah.
They were destroying it. And Shane and I had to actually defend the pick and Patrick Kane before it ever happened. And it's just how when you're a franchise that's not very successful And you go through all those years of not being successful, and then you look at the draft and you're like, well, we want to get stronger and this.
So they wanted. So let me get this straight. They wanted Van Riemsdyk.
They didn't say Van Riemsdyk, but I actually think they would have been happier that day with Van Riemsdyk because he was bigger and stronger. And and so I always laugh about how that turned out, but they were angry. They were really angry.
Yeah,
Chicago wasn't a team that had a lot of success with small players. When you think about it, like that's a team that's Ronick's not a small guy. Like the guy, the few guys they had, that were really skilled. They weren't small, like Patrick Kane.
You can understand people doubting the Blackhawks at that point because they drafted such immortals as Cam Barker and Jack Skilly in the top 10 before they took Taves and Kane. So there wasn't much of a record of success.
Right.
But if you think about it, they did have success with, as you said, players who were on the smaller side. Ronick, Denny Savard was,
highly skilled guys. Yeah.
Some of the best players in their franchise's history.
I think Cam into that draft was like 165. I think he might have been listed right around that.
Yeah.
So they were just scared, and we were like, no, but you don't understand.
He wasn't just 165 though, Russ. He looked like unbelievably young. If you talked to Patrick Kane at that time, it was shocking how young. The only person who looks younger than him when I've seen at a draft would be John Gaudreau, who just still looks like he's
I have one because I remember walking around downtown Buffalo with Russ before the 2015 draft at the scouting combine, and us talking about a sort of a wayfish forward who played also for the London Knights, and how they said, well, he's never going to be able to put on the muscle mass to be able to withstand the pounding of the NHL. And that kid was Mitch Marner, and look where he is now.
Oh, yeah, no, he also looked very young. He's another one.
And Mitch Marner, unlike Patrick Kane, Mitch Marner is not a burner. He's not he's a good skater, but he's not a phenomenal skater, whereas Kane is. And Marner's success is based on his vision, his guile, his ability to not put himself in vulnerable positions. That's the way people have to think now. It's not is a guy 6'4" and be able to withstand the punishment of the NHL. Sometimes a smaller player can get away with things like surviving the league based on all the other aspects that they bring.
That's what I'll say. And what I'll say is that I think sometimes when we look at, depending on the position played, I think you see teams probably still more willing to take a chance on a smaller player if they're a wing versus a center. A center position, I still think the premium is still on the more sizable player who can, dictate at the face-off dot, handle the physical rigors and responsibilities of that position versus, having a smaller center. But then again, of course, you get someone like Claude Giroux, who was center, went to wing at the beginning of his career, then moved back to center. But if you're going up against big guys on a consistent basis, eventually there is a wear down effect.
Well, here's what we also pointed out. He had 62 goals and 145 points. I think 62 goals is still the London Knights team record. He didn't just have 90 points and you're like, okay, I kind of wonder if this guy can play hockey. He's also in the World Juniors was more than a point a game. They were under 18s. No, World Juniors. He was in the World Juniors at that young, and he was more than a point a game. And so there was a track record there. I laugh at it. And the weird thing about, I guess, me covering Patrick Kane is, so this year I only get to one game in London, and it's the day they're retiring his number, and I had no idea. I literally walk in and I see they have a number up there. I'm like, oh, that's Patrick Kane. And sure enough, Patrick Kane's there and his family's there. And it was good. It was a nice night. Cool. But it is amazing sometimes how, you fans, look, I always say, Elias Pettersson, Vancouver fans did not want him. They were talking about how skinny he was that day. They were just like, I don't think this is a good pick. I forget who they wanted, but they were killing Benning a little bit.
Well, look at all the players. Look at all the people who skipped on. Two guys you can think of recently, and that would be Clayton Keller and Alex DeBrincat, right? Both are and then this year the guy Montreal got, we had
Caulfield. Well, he didn't fall too far. He fell mid-first round. So.
But Keller one was interesting. I was live tweeting that day, and I remember saying, I can't believe Keller was going down that far. I actually gave the Coyotes a lot of credit. I'm like, finally, a team is brave. I think I even tweeted this, like, brave enough to draft him. Like, you know.
No, it was great. And DeBrincat was like, I was just so
yeah, we were incensed about that. We all were.
I was just like,
he shouldn't have gone. I mean, I agree in terms of
how the hell does DeBrincat
was way too far.
End up on Chicago, like a team at that time. You need him.
Russ can attest to this. We're sitting in the bowels of KeyBank Center after the first round, and we both look at each other and said, whoever's going to get DeBrincat is going to get a steal. And then as soon as Chicago picked him, I turned to Russ and I said, there you go. He's going to be a 40-goal scorer for the team that doesn't need another 40-goal scorer, and that's what happened.
And at that time, they didn't. At that time, they were like winning the Stanley Cup. You know, they were.
Now his offensive production is absolutely essential for them to compete. So.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, I remember writing about this and then saying it again, maybe even on Sirius with DeBrincat. He had 100 points in high school. He had 100 points in his first 2 seasons in the Erie. Then he gets drafted and he has 127 points. Like, where was the doubt?
Yeah.
Every level he dominated at.
It was all size.
I know.
And like Gaudreau was the same thing too. Like, I mean, Gaudreau, a lot of people passed on Gaudreau too. Like there's, it's just like, that is that small player thing. And, go back to like even Danny Briere, who got passed on by a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, Briere was in the wrong era. If Briere was in this era, he would have gotten drafted higher, but knowing that he was in the clutch and grab era, that's what really killed him for a while.
Do you remember who Danny Briere was traded for when he went from Phoenix to Buffalo? The total opposite of him as a player, Chris Gratton.
Chris Gratton.
That's right.
That yep.
Right. Yep. That's right. That's interesting.
We talked about Chris Gratton the other day. He's still my hero because he's gotten paid more per goal than any player in the modern era.
My hero.
Yes. No. Gratton was not. He was like the first carnation of Jeff Carter to me. Like, in just certain ways.
I've never seen, like I said before, I've never seen a player establish his worth and get as much money as Chris Gratton did based on one losing 6-game series against Eric Lindros. He stood up physically to Lindros, and everybody said, "Oh my God, we got to get this guy because he can neutralize Lindros." And Bobby Clark basically said, "I got to get this guy so he can't."
Ed Snyder said, "We got to get this guy." It was Ed Snyder.
I know what he went. No, I got another sport comparison. It's like the Sixers signing Al Horford.
Okay,
same thing.
Yeah,
ill-fitting. Just can't have the guys playing together. They had Gratton sometimes playing wing, which he completely was out of it. Same way that the Sixers had their player out of forward. So Philadelphia, unfortunately, has this thing of, I think, sometimes a history of, if he's killing us, we got to get him. But then he gets here, and it's like,
Now what? No, I agree. I agree completely. I mean, he also had he just didn't go to the Gratton. Just didn't. He had that that disease that a little bit like Matt Sundin was the best at that kind of player who went to the net and would score goals. But with Matt Sundin, sometimes when you go to the net too, it would be frustrating to watch. Carter's the same way. Jeff Carter won't go to the net sometimes, tries to be a perimeter player, and he's okay back there, but he's not like a great player.
Are we thinking about the same Matt Sundin? Because he didn't go to the net a lot when he was in Toronto.
Yeah, but I think he did better than these guys. And, and Gratton was the same cut. Like, he tried to be, when he got drafted to the Flyers, he tried to become a perimeter player.
If you think about it, if my math is right, he had 214 goals. He made $43 million. So that's around a little over $20,000 a goal.
Yeah, I think
that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's really good. No, I mean,
I'll take that. Let me ask this, because when we've been talking about this off and on, waiting for the results of the CBA and the solution to the Kaprizov, Romanov, Sorokin situation was very interesting. Now, from what I understand, after the CBA is ratified, teams have a window of a little over 48 hours to be able to sign these players to contracts. They cannot play in the play-in round, or if they're on a team that's in the playoffs, they cannot play this year. There's no signing bonus, but they're signing for 2019-20, and they can burn a year, but they cannot play. There's no signing bonus for the following year. Russ, we were talking about this before the show. I don't know what the motivation here for these players is to sign with the NHL clubs unless they feel they have they can't advance their career staying in the KHL. but they're on entry-level contracts, so more than likely they're going to be able to make more money in the KHL.
Well, if I got it right, Kaprizov is the shortest one of the entry levels. So
Right.
if you burn a year, he's got 1 year, right? So you burn a year.
1 or 2.
I think it's 2. I think if he burns one, there's 1 left, right?
Right.
And so
Yeah.
it's probably more in his favor than anybody else to want to come over and do it since he's proven a lot in the KHL.
Right.
But that's a real risk for the Wild in the sense that we get 1 year out of him, and now all of a sudden we're negotiating with him. If he gets 30, 35 goals like he normally gets, this is now a big contract. We don't even get like a discount for drafting this guy all these years ago. Now the other two,
but he would be an arbitration eligible RFA after the.
Sure, but if he gets 35 goals, Mike, I mean,
he's going to be making $6 million a year or something.
Yeah,
Right.
It's a hell of a jump. The interesting one though, from the other two standpoint, is I did speak to a Russian source, and my belief is that Romanov's not quite ready. Like, I think the offense, I think he could play in the league, but the offense won't be there like it is in the KHL.
Right.
And it depends how badly he wants to play in the NHL. That would he come over, sign this deal, and literally probably not play until June. Sorokin's the more interesting one because he's a goalie. Does a goalie really want to come over and not play? And that's the toughest one for me is I don't think a veteran goalie is going to want to come over, sign, get used to the place, and yet he doesn't really – he can practice with the team, but he can never play until they start the next season.
Yeah, it's just there's no opportunity in that case,
right.
so it doesn't make sense for him to do that. Now, on Romanov's case, I would say as a younger defenseman, cultural, especially going to Montreal, different culture, and, you know, hopefully by the time – especially – on defense, where communication is obviously critical throughout the lineup, but especially on defense, getting used to, you know, being in a different country, learning the language, both English and French in this circumstance, would go a long way, I think, to help. And I could see Romanov potentially looking at it from that perspective and saying, it'll help me be, you know, help me in my circumstance when things are ready to go.
Well, the motivation for Sorokin might be he's 24 right now. If he signs the deal, I believe it's a 1 year ELC, and he would be arbitration eligible after the 1 year. If he waits, if he stays in Russia, since there's no transfer agreement between the NHL and the KHL, he doesn't become an unrestricted free agent like Panarin did a few years ago. He's still Islanders property, and he would still sign a 1 year deal. But like some of the other Russian free agents, I believe he's a UFA after the 1 year, and that might be the benefit for him. If he has a good year with the Islanders, he can sell his wares on the open market, and then
But he might only be a backup, and that could hurt his salary. Like, that's the risk for him is if he comes over, he's risking literally waiting all this time just to be a backup, and we don't even know how many games he'll play.
Right.
But at the same time, he always still has the opportunity to go back to the K.
Right.
Well, no, but that's the other thing. If he just delays coming to the NHL, if he doesn't sign for this year, he can't play the next year. So that means he'll be back in 3 years. If he comes back in 3 years at the age of 27, he might be the guy. At that point, they will probably desperately need him at that point, and that would change the situation. So I think it's the toughest. I think he's the toughest sell. I think Kaprizov's the easiest sell, and I think Romanov's smart in the sense that, like Anthony said, you could get him used to everything, but I don't like the idea of rushing him into the league, but I don't know if they'll be in AHL. Like, we just don't know.
I thought I love the minutia of these CBAs sometimes.
Yeah.
When it came out that, okay, you're on a team that gets eliminated from the play-in round or from the playoffs, and I think it's like 48 or 72 hours after that. If you're a UFA, you don't have to wait till November the 1st to sign. If you're going to sign with a European team, you can sign right away because these European leagues are starting in September, October. But the interesting thing here is these players cannot come back to the NHL. If the KHL season ends in April and the NHL season starts in January, they're probably going to be going till late May for the regular season.
Right.
These players can't come back. So, I mean, that's really interesting because I thought that there would be a bunch of KHLers that might parachute in, and this rule is basically trying to prevent the KHLers from coming back.
Yeah, this is also the NHL's way of saying that we're like, we are the place you want to play. Like this is their way of subtly putting it out there that, the KHL is not a real league in their mind, and it's a little bit of a shot, like kind of like if you're going to play there, just play there, like we're
the only problem, Eck, is while the KHL we could say is not a real league. If you're playing for CSKA, you get treated like royalty. Anthony,
no, I'm not saying it isn't real. I'm not saying it isn't real league, but this is
or Akbar's Kazan, any of those teams. Yeah, if you're at that top end, it's like an NHL. I think it's like an NHL experience. But then elsewhere, Bodies No Sultan maybe as well. But
yeah, it's still not an NHL experience though. Like even those teams. I mean, talking players who play over there, it's more of like
travel's insane. Travel there is because you're in multiple countries, traveling to Kazakhstan, which is basically as big as the United States.
Yeah.
In terms of overall size, it's tough when you have those long, especially if you end up in the East. If you end up in the Eastern Conference versus that being in the Western Conference in Russia, it's
huge.
It's
difference.
A lot of travel.
A huge difference, and I think that and I really do think that one of the really interesting minutiae things I wrote about yesterday was the whole concept that a no movement clause and a no trade clause stays with the player now for sure, like 100%. Like, and we were always confused by this. Like, this was something I was always baffled by before because sometimes it would and sometimes it wouldn't. And as it turns out, before it was up to the team to accept to keep the no trade, and some teams wouldn't, some teams wouldn't. So that's why we're always like, does a no trade clause die when he's traded or when he agrees to one trade? Because it did in some cases, and in some cases it didn't. But the fact that they clarified this, that it does stay with him, is really good.
Well,
It will make players be a lot more comfortable being traded now because they
have more control. Once they waive, it's not like it's an open door. I thought the most interesting one was the fact that they're eliminating conditional picks when it comes to it's not they can still have conditional picks based on performance, but I don't believe they can have conditional picks based on whether a team makes the playoffs or not.
Right.
So if that's the case, so that rule,
I would agree. I think, and that was a good move. I think I do because at the end, it should be the condition should be on the performance of the player, because the player can affect only so much of the rest of the team. They can do Mike.
Actually, it's not whether the team makes or misses the playoffs. It's whether the player re-signs with the team.
That's the deal. Like, it's whether. If the player resigns with the team, people would get more. But the situation with that is
that's fair, and that's also, I think, that's completely, I think, a fair scenario there. It ensures your investment.
Yeah, what happened before would be that you would, if you were like say Taylor Hall with Arizona, which is a good way of looking at it. Like if you're Arizona, like when Taylor Hall becomes a UFA now, Arizona does have a chance to sign him before anybody else does, obviously, because they own him.
Well.
But
I give them 45% chance, though. Honestly,
no, I don't think they're gonna resign him. But if they do, they pay a price for that resigning because that's in there. So the disadvantage for them because everyone else gets a free shot at him July 1st.
I'll give you an example, like the Leafs deal that they made with the Kings. The third round pick next year goes up to a second if there was a player component in it with Jack Campbell, but that passed. But it's whether they re-sign Kyle Clifford or not. Well, they may not have any intention on re-signing Kyle Clifford based on what he makes or how old he is or whatever. But they know that, but the Kings don't know that. So that condition is basically meaningless based on what the Leafs are going to do. So they're just eliminating that, and that's fine.
Right, exactly. I mean, the thing that bothered me more than that they didn't fix, and I'm shocked they didn't fix it, is the thing of of trading for a player's rights with a conditional pick. Like that I've always thought is baffling. Like, if we're going to trade for the rights to talk to so-and-so, and if we don't sign him, we don't give you anything. But if we do sign him, we give you something. And essentially all you're doing there is is giving a team a way to cheat to talk to him early, because there's no real risk by not signing there.
Yeah.
That to me is the biggest circumvention of the CBA concept that there is, and it happens every year. Like a couple teams will do it. They'll just and then so the rights really aren't real at all. If you don't give up, you should have to give up something for talking to somebody. You should have.
We always get that scramble of June when we see teams trying to trade off rights to get draft picks. to get a pick or two back, so the other team has exclusive rights. We saw it obviously with Philadelphia and Kevin Hayes this past off season. So,
well, you know what I think led to this? I think what led to this is the fact that they had to jump through hoops for these conditions based on whether they would resume the season or not this year, and they realized how fraught with peril the whole thing of conditional picks were. So they're just trying to simplify what's going on, and I get I get that
100%, definitely.
Yeah. So,
but if you have to, if you're going to talk to a player, you should have to give. If you're going to talk to him early, you should have to give up something, regardless of whether or not you sign him. That to me is just, and I'm really shocked that, and I know a lot of teams wanted that changed. I kind of was assuming it wasn't going to get changed, and it didn't.
Well, the one thing I was shocked at that didn't get included, and according to all the reports, it was not included because it was an advantage to the big market teams that can afford to pay it, was percentage of signing bonus and percentage of signing bonus. That to me, that would have been unfair to the Rangers or the Leafs or the Flyers or those teams that are saying, okay, we're willing to front load contracts and we're willing to pay everything except minimum salary and signing bonus, because that counters everything that goes on with these teams like Arizona, Nashville, and the Florida teams that have no state tax. It's the only benefit that the big market teams have, to give players money up front and to find loopholes in taxes. So I'm glad they didn't do that, because those teams need a little help too. So I don't think it's bad.
Yeah, I didn't think that was bad. I think that getting rid of the 35 or over issue was a wonderful thing. Like, that's something that they should have gotten rid of a long time ago.
I think it punished the older players. I mean, it
totally does. It makes for weird situations. That's just like awkward situations with teams and players.
Patrick Marleau, for example.
Yeah,
how weird do we get? Yeah, the Marleau deals. How weird is that?
Awkward, and it becomes very uncomfortable for the player and the team at that point. Like, it doesn't benefit anybody. Like,
but the thing is, in that situation, Anthony, was Patrick Marleau wasn't going to retire. He didn't want to retire. It was just simply the fact that the team that he was with couldn't afford $6.25 million, and the only way they got him 2 years before was to give him that third year. If everybody's amenable to him retiring, then he retires. But in that situation, the Leafs would have had that cap hit, and they would have nothing to show for it. He would have had to fake an injury to get that money on the
that ends up happening, faked injuries. I mean, one of the things I think that should be allowed to happen, and it's amazing to me that it hasn't been yet permitted, and every time we've gone through these CBA things, it comes up, is that if a player and a team both agree to step away from a contract, it should be allowed to be stepped away from. Like, that's just like, and it's a basic, simple thing. And, if everybody agrees, like, I remember this is like the Wayne Redden type rule, like, or whatever, where you have like guys that just like, this is not working out. I'm in the minors because my contract is, no one wants it. So, Redden would have, he wanted to just void the contract and sign someplace else where he could play in the NHL.
Yeah. The NHL needed to find a way, like a sort of happy medium, because when you have the Redden situation like you're talking about, and if you remember back in the day with McGillney and Malakoff with the Devils, where buries them because they're making too much money. There has to be a mechanism to find a way for these players to go someplace else and sign a 1-year deal for less, so they can continue their career and not be handcuffed by a big contract that didn't work out.
Yeah, I mean, basically, if you say, "Listen, I'm willing to void that contract. I'm taking you off the hook for the contract. The team wants out. I went out. I'm going to go sign someplace else and play." That there's no question that every year there's one or two of those contracts that would happen with. And it just, because the players end up in weird circumstances because of whatever reason, and they know they could play someplace else, but they can't go because the contract, no one's going to pay that money or whatever. We'd have a lot more movement, a lot more trades and things like that too. So a lot more interesting stuff for all of us. But that, I think we're seeing, this is a 6-year deal, and it's being put together pretty quickly. And some of this stuff maybe is going to be talked about down the line again. But I think there's more of an importance to get this together right now than there is to work out something.
I was going to ask Shane about what he thought, because we've had this debate about the impact of the Olympics. Eck, you have your view. John Shannon, who we've had on recently, also had his view, and of course Kevin Allen has his view as well. So I was curious to get Shane. So hopefully, maybe next time we get Shane on, we'll ask him about that.
Yeah. It's very interesting though, and like I said, we'll ask Shane and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, between now and the time that it's ratified. But the caveat in the deal that this is necessitated whether the NHL can make an agreement with the IOC and the IIHF. That's like saying,
agreed.
That's a really big caveat, and it's surprising to me that it exists because it really does take the NHL off the hook completely.
Right.
They can sit back and say we couldn't make a deal. And
now, I don't know whether that means that the NHLPA will have a representative in the negotiations so they know what's going on. I don't think so.
I don't think they will. I mean, I don't think they should. I don't think they should. And I think that the reality is, it's like that's like giving up something. And it's like the NHL not giving up anything, really. Honestly.
Right. Really we promise we will try our utmost to go to the Olympics. Right. But if the IOC are a bunch of intransigent jerks, and and we can't get a deal where we get rights for video and other things, then it's a meaningless promise.
It is. It's a red herring, very much so. I agree. I think that's an interesting one for sure. Well, that is all the time we have for today, guys. It was great again having Shane on, and of course Anthony on as well. And thank you as always. Fantastic stuff.
Of course.
Guys, remember you can go to NHL.com or on patreon.com/hockey. Patreon.com/hockey and support this show that we try to speak properly on anytime. And go there and help us out. We'd appreciate that. Remember, folks, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you on